Which situation will always create high sexual tension? In college, I got a pretty meh haircut and was lamenting about it to a group of friends. One girl chimed in that she could fix it for me and she had all the tools in her room to do it. We went back to her dorm room and she slowly spent a lot of time snipping little bits of my hair, moving around me, and we made a ton of eye contact while she checked it from every angle. She'd get in close to check things, and I could feel her breath on my neck, or she'd run her fingers through my hair and across my scalp to pull some up to be trimmed. The tension was so thick I could barely breathe, and she did a great job on my hair, being the last to people at work. Bonus points if it's in the lab behind a lot of restricted access doors. It's quiet. It's private. Neither of you are speaking because you're concentrating or trying to let the other person concentrate. So, of course, your imagination picks this time to revert to maximum creativity and sexual fantasy despite you trying to suppress it. Times like this I wish I could manually disable the lizard parts of my brain. I'm surprised no one has mentioned this, but working out with someone that's trying to show you different techniques and watching their muscles flex. I had a personal trainer that was very professional and would squat behind me or show me how to use certain machines and would have to sit behind me to demonstrate how I should do it, and it was surprisingly hard to focus 100% of the time. I got caught in the rain with someone once. We were both attached to other people at the time and currently as well, and had gone out for a professional, friendly lunch. I had picked her up from work, we discussed the project, ate, and were ready to leave when the sky opened up. I ran to my car down the block, got it, and drove up to the restaurant to pick her up. She dashed out of the entrance and into my car. Both of us were soaked. We looked at each other for a moment and laughed it off. I always thought she was cute and a good friend, but in that moment I wanted so desperately to kiss her. I wanted her so bad. The urge was incredibly overwhelming. I've never had that kind of feeling since. I have no idea if she ever thought of me as more than a friend, but that moment really changed how I felt about her. Practicing taiko for months together for a festival. We usually stayed after practice because she asked for help with her form. Touching her arms and hands, adjusting her posture, and sometimes handling her hips to correct the form. One night she leaned into me when we were practicing a new song which required a perfect posture. She leaned in face to face while my hands held her up from falling. I was sweating from practice. As soon as I took my hand and wiped her hair from her face, we kissed for what felt like years. I placed my hand behind her head and held her there. My first kiss. We dated after for 2 years. She moved back to her home country. Never saw her again. My first everything. Situations with music ever since has created a sexual tension that will never go away. Went to a haunted house, cornfield on my birthday with a group of friends some years back. The friends knew I had terrible night vision and also that I had a huge crush on one of the friends. We decided to walk with a chain of held hands so we didn't get separated and I wouldn't get lost in the blinding darkness, and they strategically put me and my crush together. She grabbed my hand in a kind of awkward way and shortly after readjusted so our fingers were interlocked. This is a very, very weird situation that I assume is not common, but this girl in my class in middle school asked to touch my ear. She starts to gently rub my earlobe and that shit felt amazing for some reason. She said, "Oh my god, it's so soft, guys, come touch his ear." Then all her friends started touching my ear. Like what all ears feel the same. Weird and awakening experience for sure, being with a sexual partner in a place where it'd be way too risky to do anything. Personally, I feel this most in elevators, lifts. In an empty lift, you can go for kisses and gropes and feels while the thing is moving, but it could still stop at practically any moment and open for someone to see you. What's more tense, though, is a packed lift. Standing next to someone you love and are attracted to, while completely boxed in by other people, is almost guaranteed to be tense sexually. My fiancé and I have made it a tradition to kiss in every lift we can. We even nod and say tradition before we do it sometimes. Never been seen yet, but we have stopped earlier than we were expecting only because we lost track of time and had to make sure we're not looking omega homo sus when the doors open in case there's anyone there. There was this guy in my college lab course that I would hang out with a bit. The teacher left for like 30 minutes one time and everyone was just chilling. I like to draw and have ADHD, so sitting still is a no-no for me, so I asked if I could draw on his hand. He said sure, and I held his wrist and drew some koi fish swimming down his forearm to his hand. He was quiet and I didn't notice until near the end that his fingers were gently pressing against my wrist, almost like he was holding on to me. I felt really warm once I realized he'd been doing that the whole time. We've been married for 5 years now. Any circumstance where the people who are even remotely attracted to each other are told or share the understanding that they cannot, for any reason whatsoever, act on it. They work at the same place. Their parents hate each other. Their friends hate each other. I was on the outs with a girl once and her friend and I got on really well. We didn't act on it because her friend, my sulfur monoxide at the time, was a very good person. Still is. But the one or two instances of light flirting that happened when people weren't watching at the end was tough to bear. We shared an elevator for a ride up to the hotel room at a wedding and we did not look or speak to each other the whole ride. One look and it would have been off to Pound Town for the both of us, followed by social disaster. I once had an old hand-winding sewing machine for sale in my charity shop. One day this incredibly hot woman comes up to me and starts talking to me about it. She said, "I love hand machines, they're great for sewing leather." Everything fell out of me. I couldn't look at her and just mumbled some nonsense. I am not sure if it was a come on or not, but it's the hottest sentence that I've ever heard in public. I was at a work conference and at wall group drinking afterwards. A very attractive woman from the conference sat next to me. We'd been trading glances all day. Lots of pressing her leg against mine, leaning in to talk, whisper in my ear, etc. Definite tension, but I was engaged so I wasn't reciprocating, and while it's a nice ego boost, I was getting pretty uncomfortable. Then she just stuck her finger in my mouth while I was in mid-sentence. I'm a huge germaphobe. Tension disappeared immediately because I was like, "Did you just stick your finger in my mouth? We've been sitting in this bar for 3 hours. Do you have any idea how dirty these places are? I gotta go wash my mouth out, JFC. That's me, Mr. Smooth." I mean, it was great to get out of that situation, but someone sticking a finger in my mouth is one of the grossest things I can think of. So much bacteria. Getting winked at. I'm surprised I haven't seen this comment yet. I was getting dinner with my husband and the hot waiter, restaurant owner, winked at me twice throughout our meal while being friendly to my husband. I never get winked at and am unhappy in my marriage right now, so this little random flirt was so hot to me I still think about it weeks later. The whole meal was full of sexual tension because of this silent flirting. At one point he sounded to get our attention from the open kitchen where we could see him. Only my head lifted up and we shared eye contact for at least 5 whole seconds before I started to tilt my head in confusion. Then he signaled to get my husband's attention and asked my husband how the food was. So that was 1 wink at the start of the meal, 1 wink at the end of the meal, and 5 seconds stare down in between. All this eye contact got me feeling so special, flattered and turned on all at the same time. The food wasn't so great though, so we won't be returning. But this interaction lives rent-free in my thoughts, and I don't know how I'm gonna act if I ever see him again. Story time. Used to work with the biggest crush of my life. Redhead, green eyes, very attractive. She was married and we both knew nothing was ever going to happen physically, but mentally we had a strong connection. Anyway, we worked F&B at a hotel. One day we were tasked with cleaning the lounge area on the hotel roof, which basically was taking a water hose and spraying everything down. One of those jobs you know going and you are going to get wet and dress appropriately. She showed up wearing an old white Miller Lite shirt. She knew full that as soon as that shirt got wet it was see-through. We both had hoses at one point and she sprayed me and I of course sprayed her and it devolved into both of us soaked and laughing. Then we kind of stopped laughing and we were really close to each other. Easily the most sexual tension I've ever felt in my life. I still remember that moment like it was yesterday and it's been almost 20 years gone. Thanks for letting me reminisce.